I am not a product of my circumstances. I'm a product of my decisions. Stephen Covey. There's something familiar about how we use the word hope. It shows up in so many different ways. Like when we say, I hope this works out. I hope they get back to me. I hope it goes the way I want it to. And most of the time, it's not perceived as a negative. It actually feels like you're giving something space instead of forcing it. Because not everything should be forced. Some things do take time. Some things do need patience. Some things aren't fully in your control. And you know that. So hoping feels like the right position to take. In your head, you're staying composed without getting frustrated or overreacting. And if you're being honest, there's also some sense of relief in it. Because when you say, I hope this works out, there's a subtle internal shift. It's like you've stepped back half a step and taken a little pressure off yourself. It's not dramatic. You might not even notice it as it's happening. And that's the part that's easy to miss. Because on the surface, nothing about hoping seems like you're trying to avoid anything. It doesn't feel like you're giving anything up. It feels like you're staying patient and optimistic. However, if you really think about it, it starts to shift how you hear the word hope. Because by itself, hope isn't the issue. It's not something that needs to be removed, replaced. It can actually be useful. It can keep you steady when things are uncertain. It can help you stay committed that little bit longer than you otherwise would. However, there's a line where it changes roles, where it stops being something that supports you and starts becoming something that stands in front of you. And if you pay attention, you can recognize it when it happens. It's when the sentence ends at, I hope, and nothing follows. No next step, no decision, no adjustments, just the pause. And in that pause, something gets passed off. But what's worse, you're likely not even thinking about it in that manner. The responsibility for what happens next shifts away from you and onto something else. Now you're relying on better timing, better circumstances, a better moment, or someone else to do it. And again, there's no alarms going off because it doesn't feel wrong. The issue isn't the words, it's the absence of action behind them. Hope, when it's paired with action, feels different. It's more like, I hope this works out, so here's what I'm going to do next. And now hope isn't carrying the burden. You are. On the other hand, without that shift, hope becomes a kind of placeholder. It fills the space where a decision or action would usually sit. It lets you stay connected to the outcome without fully owning what's required to move towards it. But in all reality, part of the reason that shift happens is because it actually feels better in the moment. There's a kind of calming effect that comes with hoping. When you say, I hope this works out, you aren't necessarily forced to do anything right away. You don't have to address whether you need to change something, whether you're avoiding something, or whether there's something more pressing that's sitting right in front of you. You get to stay in a holding pattern. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. A pause, a little space to breathe. But there's a difference between taking a pause and settling into it. Because the longer that calm sticks around, the more it starts to shape what happens next. You put something off today, then tomorrow. And over time, that calm turns into distance. Distance from the effort that you're actually not putting into the situation. So then yes, the present does feel easier, but the future will get a little heavier. And it just slowly adds up. You feel settled right now, but later, you're carrying more than you needed to. Then, when you finally do come back to it, it's not the same situation anymore. And more than likely, a little more complicated than it had to be. And somewhere along the way, something else starts to shift. It's no longer only about the situation anymore. It's about your relationship with yourself. When you repeatedly leave things in that I hope space, you don't just delay action. You start to loosen the connection between what you know and what you actually do. The situation is still there. You're still clearly aware of it. You'll catch yourself thinking about and telling yourself, I should probably handle that. Or a better one, you'll acknowledge that this isn't really going to fix itself. But instead of moving on it, you let it sit. Again, telling yourself, I'll circle back to it later. And over time, those small moments stack up. Because every time you recognize something and don't act on it, you're teaching yourself, whether you mean to or not, that your own thoughts and ideas don't require a response. That what you acknowledge doesn't necessarily lead to what you do. And the gap starts to widen. It's not obvious. Definitely doesn't happen overnight. However, soon there's more internal pauses, even when you know exactly what needs to happen. Because little by little, you've gotten used to not following through on what you already understand needs to be done by you. And when that distance from yourself starts to build, it begins to show up in how you see other people. Because once you've handed off responsibility, now, admit it, with some judgment, you start watching to see who's going to pick it up, or what you hope happens actually does. But it usually doesn't. You probably won't say anything out loud, but you're waiting for the reply. You're waiting for someone's recognition of what you've already done, waiting for someone to step in without you having to tell them to. And when it doesn't happen the way that you hoped it would, something else starts creeping in. It starts as frustration mixed with confusion, but eventually it becomes resentment. Because in your opinion, other people dropped the ball. They didn't respond. They didn't follow through. They didn't see what you've done or what you needed. And while some of that might be true, what's easy to miss is how much self-inflicted pressure you'd already put on them before anything even happened. How much you were counting on something else or someone else to close the gap. Someone else to pick up the slack. Someone else to do what you should have been or should be doing. So then, when they don't come through, it doesn't feel like something wasn't done. It feels personal, like something was withheld from you. And that's where things start to get a little awkward. Because now you're reacting to an outcome that you weren't fully in control of, but you would put your hope in it as if you were. It creates a loop where your progress feels tied to other people's decisions, their actions, their awareness, that they likely don't even know that you've put that responsibility on them. Then, the more that loop repeats, the more it reinforces the idea that your progress depends on or is being held back by something or someone other than you. And if that pattern sticks around long enough, it starts to impact things deeper than just decisions or timing. It'll shape how you see yourself. Not all at once. It's not like you suddenly decide you're not capable or that things are out of your hands. You just get used to being in a position where you're waiting for things to line up, waiting for the right moment, waiting for something to alert you so that you can finally move. And the longer that becomes normal, the more it starts to feel like that's just how things work. Like your role is to stay ready, but not necessarily to initiate. To stay aware, but not always step in. To be prepared, but still dependent on something else to open the door. And over time, it lowers your expectations that you have of yourself. Not in the terms of what you want, because you're always hoping, but in terms of what you believe you actually influence. You stop asking, what can I do about this right now? And start settling into, let's see how this plays out. Again, it doesn't feel dramatic. It doesn't feel like you've given anything up. But if you zoom out, you're no longer at the center of your own momentum. You're adjacent to it. You're watching it, reacting to it, hoping that the breaks or the chances come your way. And the longer you stay there, you forget that you didn't start there, that at some point you moved yourself into that position because it feels easier to wait than to step forward and handle it. So maybe it's not really about whether hope is good or bad. It's more about recognizing where it sits on your priorities list. I mean, let's be honest. Every one of us hopes on a daily basis. Hope in itself, not a bad thing. There are moments where hope does exactly what it's supposed to do. You'll say, man, I hope this works out. And that gives you a moment to pause, to steady yourself, to not overreact. It gives things room to unfold at their pace. Because admit it, we're all impatient. However, there are other moments where hoping and I wish takes on more than that. Where you're now relying on someone else to do the difficult part. Where you want to hand things off that were never meant to be handed off. And those moments, they blend into everything else you're managing, everything you're balancing, everything you're trying to figure out. So you say it. I hope it gets done. It's just a sentence. It's a delay. But there's another part to that sentence. What you're actually saying is, I hope it gets done because I don't want to do it. And over time, if you pay attention, you'll start to see the difference. There's a difference between your hope that sits beside you, which is the hope that is your partner, pushing you to do more, and your hope that stands in front of you, which is the hope that doesn't help you, and you never seem to catch up to it. And once that difference becomes more clear, the question isn't really about hope anymore. It's about where you are in relation to it. It's the small moments where something could move or change and either does or doesn't because you hope for it and do something about it, or because you hope for it, but you want someone else to do it. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes with me. Until next time, stay sharp, stay grounded, and keep showing up.